Morning, everyone. Welcome to NBC Markets Morning Call, 15th of July, 2025. Overnight, stocks sort of ground higher as Trump really laid the ground just 36 hours after he's threatened quite a few countries with much higher tariffs. Sort of laying the ground to taco, which is Trump always chickens out on trade deals, which is the phrase that a journalist has coined because he seems to obviously make these large threats and then, really backpedal. The backpedaling is getting quicker and quicker. It's pretty embarrassing, really, for the leader of the free world. But he said he was open to negotiations, etc., etc. So obviously, all the negativity that was priced into the market yesterday about potential trade wars was really unwound, and we started to sort of head a little bit higher overall. So the Aussie market was still up yesterday, more on the back of iron ore and, the commodities market. And obviously that mining sector has been really depressed over the last 18 months, particularly the last 12 months. Nikkei was off. That's on the back of higher bond yields. I think we've reached a record in some of the long-end Japanese bond yields yesterday. Hang Seng was up mildly. European markets were relatively flat, to be honest, as really was the US market. I mean, up 0.25% in the Dow, up 0.3% in the Nasdaq, up maybe 0.6% in the Russell, the small cap index. So nothing major, but they were down around about 0.5% in futures from most of the Asian session yesterday. Having a look through, obviously, oil sector down a little bit, CVX or Chevron there, Exxon down a little bit. Nvidia and Apple took a bit of a breather, as did most of the chip sector overall. Some of the transportation Ubered down about 1.57 there percent. That is. Obviously, I'm assuming as Elon probably getting a little bit more success with his robo-taxi tests in in Texas. And obviously the banking sector as well, as you can see here, up with I think we've got JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Citi, BlackRock tomorrow, which will kick off earnings season really as a whole, or what the unofficial kickoff of earnings season. And I think the general consensus on the banks is solid but unspectacular is probably the best way to sum it up. What they're expecting for earnings results in the near future, and we've got a few of the other banks on Wednesday. We've also got key CPI data coming up as well. And look, having a quick flick through trending topics on Twitter, there was, a few conspiracy theorists out there with the supposed market manipulation in silver via the futures on COMEX. It is a little bit of a pattern, though, that Asian session, European session, we seem to rally quite nicely, and then it gets hit. It gets hit in the US session. It was very surprising on Friday that it finished at that, at that high. But silver was up 1.5% when we left the office here 12 hours ago, 13 hours ago. So it's dropped about 3%. And so look, there is reports that the banks, there's this old rumor that JP Morgan holds a lot of silver and they've got futures hedges on, etc. There's always been this rumor that the banks are short silver, but I think they're just short silver against their physical holdings, to be brutally honest. But that bit of a trend there that silver not so good in the US session, probably expected to recover back up over the course of the Asian and European session today. Got up to 39.50, which is pretty lofty heights after breaking through that 35.50 15-year high some sort of month ago, basically. We would expect it to head back up. Copper drifted off as well, as did platinum, and crude down anywhere from 1.5% to 3.5% through those guys. Uranium was up. I believe that was probably on the back of the fact that President Trump announced a $70 billion funding to go towards AI and energy for AI. I would imagine that would bode well for both copper, because he's talking about the energy grid as well. And look, you're going to have to basically. There's different. I'm no electrician, but they have to rewire a lot of the grid. Nuclear nuclear is going to need uranium, and obviously you're going to need to rewire it, which is going to require copper. Copper took a little bit of a breather, but uranium up about 4%. The URA ETF overnight. Bitcoin hit a record high, 123,000, as they go into what they're calling crypto week in the US on Capitol Hill. They're essentially discussing crypto regulation, which the crypto bros don't like, but everyone else who's in the ETFs, etc., is a big fan of. So there's a little bit of a fight, because the whole thing with crypto is decentralized finance, or DeFi, and the government having more control really goes very much against the grain of what crypto stands for. Because the banks and the central banks and governments printing money over the last sort of 15 to, since the GFC, 15 to 20 years, has been a bit of an abuse of their power, and has very much eroded wealth, which is why certainly here at MPC the last 18 months we've been focusing on the likes of silver, the likes of gold and platinum, etc., and we're very deep in the money on those, because those real assets don't erode. Don't erode with an increase in the money supply, or the M2, which is basically printing money. And it doesn't matter if something's priced in US dollars and they keep printing US dollars. Well, inflation's going to eat at your wealth and erode your wealth. So those sorts of real assets, which Bitcoin definitely falls in the class of now, are very cheap against the US equity market on a historical basis. And, you would probably expect them to continue to grind a little bit higher. Bond yields were up overnight as well. We're a long way from highs in those bond yields, but they are drifting higher again. And that was another trending topic on Twitter as well, on x.com, was the calls for Jerome Powell's head. But yet again, anyone who's watched me do any sort of media, the central bank is independent for a reason. It shouldn't be messed with from a political standpoint. And just because people, want lower rates, I don't think they can be trusted to play the long game. And central banks are there and are independent for that reason. So interest rates don't get politicised, and governments don't take cheap wins to get rates down, because of course they always want rates down because they want growth and low unemployment. But sometimes you need an independent body, i.e. the central banks, to see the forest for the trees, and not just continually take short-term wins. So I think I'm behind Michelle Bullock in Australia, Jerome Powell in the US, to stick to their guns. We are at historically low rates, and I think people should just stop whinging, because we can't have continual growth forever. It's just the way the economy works, because people get greedy and then they get fearful. It's the human condition. So someone's got to look after us in regards to that. So GDP, retail sales, industrial production for China today will be pretty important. Obviously, the PBOC around about 3 to 6 months ago said that they were maintaining GDP above 5% using stimulus of any means. So any weakness in GDP may see an initial sell-off in the commodities, but then also could have some optimism around whether the PBOC providing more stimulus. Retail sales, so the consumers, where they've been targeting a lot of the stimulus at, so they'll want those numbers up as well. That'll be around about probably 12 o'clock. We've got consumer sentiment here in Australia, sort of watched. Melbourne Institute, Westpac consumer sentiment. Obviously, Westpac, whilst they say they don't get it before anyone else, it's embargoed. I'm sure that someone leaves one on the printer. CPI and PPI over the next 2 nights in the US are very important, particularly Obviously, particularly if they're lower, we are going to get more cries for Jerome Powell's head. If they're higher, I think everyone will just shut up and leave him alone. I can't see them necessarily being higher. The Bureau of Labour and Statistics numbers lately have been pretty hinky, I've got to say. There's really no way that after those job cuts and all the job cuts that Microsoft and Meta and everyone's announced, like we're talking hundreds of thousands of jobs here, and we still keep getting these up 150,000 for the month, and then we go to the next month and they revise them back down. So, look, I dare say the poor people that are left at the Bureau of Labour Statistics after the whole department's been gutted would probably be a little bit fearful, and they'd be doing as they're told. I mean, everyone always accuses China and Russia of doing it. I think you'd be naive to think that the US doesn't do it as well, particularly with someone like Trump in power. Obviously, employment Thursday here, which will be closely watched. So yeah, JP Morgan, Citi, BlackRock, Wells Fargo says it's Wednesday there. They've actually updated and said it's on Tuesday night, so we'll have that one shift over to Tuesday. These calendars generally, they go off what day they reported last year in this quarter, unless the company specifically updates. So you will see some movement around those, around those names, sometimes like a day here or a day there. Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. We did a little bit of a dig into the banks yesterday in our brainstorming session for markets with the whole team. Look, Wells Fargo looks the most undervalued, but probably the broking and trading arms like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs will probably have some pretty decent numbers because of that volatility that was in the April quarter. BlackRock as well. They're starting to see pretty massive inflows for crypto. And they're looking at now a Ripple. So they've already got a Solana, they've already got an Ether, they've got a Bitcoin, and they're some of the biggest ETFs they've got. Obviously, with crypto at record highs, the tendency with crypto is when it's at record highs, everyone wants to buy it, and when it pulls back, no one wants to buy it. So the inflows at the moment, I would imagine, are extraordinarily high because we're at record highs there in Bitcoin at 123,000. I personally, we have little bits in it's a little bit choose your own adventure for our clients, but I highly recommend you at least have 1% of your portfolio in some form of crypto. But the big names, I wouldn't go outside the ones I just mentioned. In the blockchain area, for DeFi, you're looking at Ethereum, you're looking at Solana, you're looking at Ripple, and for store of value, you're looking at Bitcoin. And there's a couple of ETFs out there. I'd be very careful which ones you go into because there's some of them that are named crypto that actually don't really have actual crypto in them. So there's one, I think, Crypto Innovators, which actually has companies. But you can reflect it in companies like, say, Tesla and Block, XYZ, which is obviously listed on the ASX as well as the US exchange. They're like the number 5 and number 7 Bitcoin holders in the world. So you can get a soft exposure to those via some of those companies. MicroStrategy is another one, which is a highly leveraged Bitcoin-only strategy. That is something, I don't know, with just my 30 years of experience, just something seems a little bit dodge about that, and they keep doing massive cap raises to buy leveraged Bitcoin. Something doesn't add up, and if it all falls apart, I dare say that's one of the first dominoes to fall. So, but yeah, we have a good day today. Obviously, earnings kicks off, and that'll be the main focus leading forward. These podcasts will be a little bit longer as we try to go a little bit more in depth on some of the major earnings overnight in the US. But have a great day, and we'll speak tomorrow.